Yeah. Good evening, councillors. All councillors. So, first item on tonight's agenda is apologies for absence. There are apologies from Councillors Davis, Gray, and can you accept those apologies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move acceptance.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Firstly, are there any disclosable pecuniary interests? Any other interests? Requests for dispensation? Do we want to report any gifts or hospitality accepted over the value of £50?
Yeah.
Or any inappropriate gifts or hospitality offered?
No.
That brings us on to the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 19th of March. These have been circulated. Present myself, Councillor Clark, Councillor Davis, Councillor Wade, Councillor Rycroft, Councillor Fuller, Councillor Arnold, and Councillor Chesser. And as it were, in attendance was Councillor Ball, who joins us for the first time tonight, and I really should have said welcome before we started. So a belated welcome to Councillor Ball, our latest councillor. Are you happy that I sign those minutes?
Not proposed.
Councillor Fuller, seconded by Councillor Rycroft. All those in favour? Seems to be everybody. The next item says public participation from interested parties or members of the public. I hope there may be some watching because there's nobody in the room. It suggests there will be no consideration of requests from interested parties. Moving swiftly on, neither is there anybody here from Northumberland Council, which takes us therefore on to town matters and the update on the discussions relating to the proposal for an additional medical practice premises in Elmdale. Various things have been circulated to councillors in advance of the meeting. Thanks to Councillor Rycroft. Is there anything that we need to add to what we've already seen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it might be helpful to colleagues if I just summarise quickly how things went and my judgment as to how I very much hope they go. Colleagues will have seen the opening bowling when I wrote to Yvonne Higgins, the chief officer effectively of the NHS Northamptonshires plural integrated commissioning board who hold the big money bags. Setting out our proposals fairly, namely that I will will soonish be needing an additional medical practice premises and inviting her to negotiate. Yvonne replied quite promptly, sidestepping my arguments and simply spelling out the customary arrangements, namely that bits of money are released as and when individual houses are built on the local plan. So I responded to her, I hope courteously, with a measure of austerity on 9th of April. Colleagues would have seen what I put to Yvonne in the clerk's report on town council paper, where in essence I said, while I recognise that funding could only be released at specified times, we need to begin exploratory, in other words, find-out discussions now, with a view to A, reaching agreement in principle with the additional premises are needed, B, establishing whether or not these would form part of the Lakeside GP fund holding organisation? That is a very delicate question, which I think we should be benevolently neutral, because the sensitivity is there. And C, finding an appropriate site in Downhall. That was the 9th of April, and Yvonne has not yet responded to me. However, if I were a betting man, I'd be willing to bet that negotiations will begin, and in the end, we get what we want. My reasons. When I raised the matter, when I mentioned that Tom Perstoff at a catch-up meeting on 1st of April, he actually volunteered to weigh in and ask support. So of course I said, yes, please. So he will do so. So he was able to lever in additional funding for the core Community Diagnostic Centre, and given that there's a general election moving up, I rather think the Department of Health and Social Care will be making additional money available to ICBs up and down the country, which will be very helpful. So it's now a question of waiting on developments. So I propose, if my colleagues from council agree, that I will keep in contact with all concerned and report back regularly at full council meetings, and in advance to, of course, to the mayor, the deputy mayor, and Emma.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Willing to answer questions, of course, if any.
Any questions arising from that? No, well, thank you very much. That will indeed keep us informed as matters develop, and hopefully the MP's intervention might assist. Moving on to the Mayor's report. This was circulated in advance of the meeting. I was absent from the F&GP meeting that took place immediately before this due to a clashing event, because I've been asked to attend the Young Enterprise Awards literally in the Blackthorn room, the other end of the building. I'll put a proper report together for next time, but just suffice to say, it was an extremely good evening, and my congratulations have to go to Northampton's School for Girls, who won the county prize and will go on to the regional finals. They produce this very interesting writing tablet, which self-deletes at the press of a button. So impressed was I with the device and the presentation, I went and invested in one during the meeting, which I think somewhat surprised them. In order to keep the pace going, unless there are any questions arising out of my report, I have to say that in the last month I've done two things which I never really anticipated. One was attempting with a large pair of plastic scissors to cut a ribbon to open a filling station. Needless to say, said scissors didn't have much impact on said ribbon. And then, rather like the Oscars, I get presented with an envelope with the name of a winner inside it and get asked to read out the winner and present the award. So, two highlights in the morning. Right, the clerk's report, that has been circulated. Anything you wish to add to that?
I haven't got anything to. Oh, well, I have actually. Just thought the Ashton Road sewage issue. I think Councillor Harrison suggested that we contact Tom to see if he would be able to help with getting an expert. And he's basically come back to me today to say he doesn't really know of anybody, but he's happy to speak to Northants Council again and Anglian Water again if we want him to. But I'm not quite sure. I think we've had the same answer twice. I don't know whether we're going to get anything else.
Have we gone back to the resident to ask? Because he seems to know stuff.
Yeah, I didn't, because we agreed that I'd speak to Tom, but I mean, I can do. But he has said what he thinks is wrong. When when he gave that presentation.
Yeah, because the point was they were saying that it's not performing badly. Our point was that the design is the problem, isn't it?
So I don't know, it's sort of it's a bit of a stalemate at the minute. Not quite sure what else.
Yes, and I remember that response, which in a sense ducked the question about the original design to the thing. And I do feel that maybe we could follow up on that point and say, well, it's all very well saying it's performing, but it's probably performing at its optimum, but its optimum isn't good enough because it appears there may be a design fault. Would you like to address that issue? And actually see if they come back. And can decide from there where we take it. We're happy with that idea.
Is it worth waiting to see what the MP says or what Northland say? I accept that they may just say the same thing again, in which case we can probably move on to what the mayor suggests, but if he comes back and his influence is enough for them to say, well, we can suggest this person, that would be a better route to follow than writing now before we know whether there's a response available.
I'm happy to defer that idea pending any response from the MP.
Has he written to?
He hasn't, he just said, just to know if you want me to proceed.
So if we let him know that we would like him to follow
Yeah.
it up, and then we'll see how he comes back to us.
Yeah.
If it is the sort of response we're anticipating, then we'll go on to plan B. Any questions of the clerk, Councillor Wade?
So I have three, one is item 23-16604 from the 19th of March. You were going to email the councils to find if they have similar Citizens Advice Bureau.
Yeah, I haven't
Issues.
yet because I've been, I was waiting for Morag to come back to me, and she came back to me today with the costings for, you remember the little table? That £10,000 is if we wanted them to come every week for a year, so they've confirmed that now. So I've said we've agreed the two months for them to come every week, but that person is now on holiday, so we're to wait for them to come back.
I'm just thinking that we said we'd do 2 months and we're already 4 weeks into our 2 months, so.
Yeah, so when,
Might extend it.
so
I
now,
might have to, but
I'll probably just speak to the other town clerks in NC because I think they're the only ones that may be interested and just see what they come back with.
it strikes me that's one of the times of the essence things. Second one, if I may, the updated transport study, we said we'd think about next steps by February, it's now April. I just wonder if the next steps have been agreed. I know we've got advisory speakers in town. Are there any other things here that we should be aware of? Is there any other progress being made?
Well, we talked briefly last month about the NPR speed camera thing. And obviously the local minibus trial is continuing as a trial. They've done a Rushden Lakes trip, 34 people, including 2 from Barwell and 8 or 10 from Warmington. Wow. So they went to Rushden Lakes last week.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of an issue with timings.
It's a trial.
And there were a few that were at the bus stop and didn't. But look, people have been meaning to see if there's going to be another one. They really want it.
We're proving that there is demand. The question is, how do we meet demand? Blood and stone.
So is there a next steps on this? It sounds as though it's been successful, which is fantastic. What are the next steps?
From my point of view, I would say the next steps is find out how much it would cost us to provide a minibus service, and getting an answer from the provider is like, it's not even blood from a stone, it's crystallized blood from a stone that doesn't exist. Metaphor works. I've asked a number of times and got no answer so far. And there are parallel conversations going on with other groups, the LAPS group, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was
There's
going to say.
NNC bus policy, but again, getting answers from anyone is difficult.
So who has responsibility for moving this forward?
well, I'm trying to move it forward as best I can, but it's hard. Borag's doing a brilliant job
Yeah,
growing up sport. I suppose the question we need to think about is, if nothing comes from any other option, how would we provide the solution? And the answer is, we know this provider would like to have a minibus parked out there, that he would buy, he would get a driver in the area, it would do shuttles in and out of Amble and do connections, and he'd get 5 days work for it. But we don't know how much that would cost.
Yeah.
It might be nothing, it might be lots. There's all sorts of things. To give you an example, you'd imagine a local minibus driving under the Northants area banner would be easy to organise. At the moment, due to some boundary issue, you can pick up people from Barnwell on their bus pass, but you can't pick up people from Warmington on the bus pass due to some bureaucratic licence thing that's solved by people down there. So it's those sort of things that are just problematic. We've got good contacts with Barnwell Parish and Warmington Parish now about it. They're keen to support, hopefully we can get other parishes involved. So there is movement, but
I'm still with the York Avenue.
at the moment, yeah, glacial is the word I'd use.
Given there seems to be an NMC issue, have you spoken to Helen Harrison or any of our other councillors?
She's aware of what we've been talking about. I suppose it might be good.
but it is one of the main LAPS projects, isn't it, for this, for the.
I think so, they've got
Yeah.
funding, they think. And apparently there's a meeting this week, next week.
Yeah,
sometime
Yeah,
soon.
it's sometime this week, yeah.
So the local area partnerships, because they've identified there are problems, and when we met with Danny.
Yeah, I think it's a social isolation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it ticks lots of things, and it saves them money on their education travel budget. So it can be a really good solution.
Sounds like we're on
I'll send you an email and see what we get.
Thank you. Also on transport, study report 23-14101. It's really a question to Councillor Fuller. Speak to police about a NPR. Does that happen?
We discussed it last month. We had,
I may have missed it.
we did two responses, councillor Clark.
One response was no way in Jose, and the other response was great idea. So,
Which one of the two you can take?
I'll go for one, but, yeah, it's problematic. The response from the traffic department was, we don't have the time or finances to process
There has to be
anything that might be generated. Then we don't want to go down.
There are other issues. There are other issues. A friend of mine's a chair of a council up in Lancashire. And apparently every time you move it, it costs money. And also you have to have the town's vote. Apparently. So it's a bigger thing to do.
I think that's not, the speed watch one doesn't do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, not the speed watch.
no, the speed watch is fine.
It's
It's
designed to be, well,
Yeah. I like the speed watch, to be honest. I think speed watch is good.
we're
We're getting a second one, aren't we?
more.
Oh, the speed watch thing, now we're getting a second one.
So I think the next step for us, which I'll touch on later, if that's okay, is we probably need to get a second speed device.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and if I can then go back to the very first thing, 23-16501. You sort of have the update on Abbott House. But is there any news on the actual purchase of the field itself?
No,
I partly asked this because I kind of feel it's probably going to come up at the forthcoming town meeting in May.
yeah, I think that's partly the Fletton Field Association going to give a bit of an update of what they want to do, and hopefully by then I might know
Right.
more, but at the moment I haven't heard anything.
Is there anything we need to do to, we're just literally waiting? Is there
I mean, I
anything we need to-
can contact our solicitor and just say what's happening, but if there was anything, I think they would have.
I only raise it because I'm sure questions will be asked at the May
Yeah.
meeting.
The last time, I think the last time I updated, they were, our solicitor had had to do some more searches because they're going to now include the vehicle access. So he's got a little bit more work to do about that. So things are happening.
As long as we can report positively.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen.
Yes,
messy.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
The transfer is just taking.
these things take time. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, so the next item is to consider a request for councillors to get involved with the Northants Greenway project.
Can I volunteer?
I don't think you see anybody trying to stop you.
I had a good chat about 18 months ago with the Greenway coordinator about getting it going again up here, and she was very keen, but I think at the time its future is uncertain, so we can get on board with it.
I think they're keen to
Yeah,
do
I'm
it.
very happy, really keen to.
Do you want to vote on that, or was
Do you need anybody else, or do you feel?
I think at the moment it's probably just going to be sitting listening to people, but
I think assume Tony's going to be involved,
I
yeah.
think they just want.
If the meeting's on a date that I can make, then I'm happy to join councillor Clark.
Cool. I assume we're all more than happy at the fact I've got 2 volunteers.
It's great.
So I'll take that as a consider yourselves duly involved. Right. To agree to start work on the annual emergency planning exercise and to produce a plan.
Yeah, I think you asked for this at the last meeting because it was on the clerk's report. And I think, we've started to try and, arrange meetings, but since one of the councillors has left, and we haven't been able to get together to start discussions, so I don't know if anybody else is interested in being involved in it.
Emergency
Well, I'm involved, and of course we've got councillor Paul, we need the right, some people with experience as well.
Well, we seem to have got 3 councillors who are willing to get involved in that. So again, before anybody gets a chance to change their mind, I think we'll just move rapidly on and leave the 3 of you to work together on that. So that's coming up with something that you can at least start to talk to us about at the next meeting. Next one is somebody to receive the employment law update. It seems to have appeared in there rather than in the correspondence section. So moving on to consider the format for the annual town meeting and to approve the agenda. Councillor Wade.
So I just want to run through the agenda very quickly, and then a couple of proposals I've included in the paper that I've written. We've got a Northampton Health and Wellbeing Plan being spoken to, which I think is a 10-minute thing. I don't know whether it's worth on here or perhaps separately having an individual timing for each item so that we know how long each item is supposed to be taking, but I'm not running the meeting, you know, we're running the meeting. I've also added in from last month a looking forward bullet point at number 3, because whilst David will be looking back at what's happened during his year, the new mayor, whoever that may be, I hope we'll be looking forward as to what he or she plans to do during the forthcoming year, and hopefully there will be no objections to either of those proposals. No, okay, in that case I'll assume the response is either all have interest or agreement, so we'll kind of go ahead with that. And 2 proposals really to be added in. One is about the vision statement that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on under point 09. As was agreed in February, we're looking at the vision statement to see if it's appropriate, if it sets our vision, our plans for the future, our kind of longer term thinking, and 5 councillors got together last night to look at those. It was a very, very good, very interesting meeting. The people there made some changes to the initial draft. I'll update those and I'll send them round. And the proposal is that I have another meeting with as many people as are interested towards the end of April. And then, as it says here, under proposal 1, I go and present it at the town meeting, not as a fait accompli, not as a proposal, but really just to say to the ratepayers, this is what we're doing. We're looking at long-term planning, and this is how we can go about it. We take some views, not at the meeting, because not to prolong it, not get into any arguments about wording at the meeting, but to ask for people's input afterwards, and maybe even a consultation paper towards the middle of the year, and then work with councillors and with interested ratepayers to say this could be our long-term vision for the town. So before I move on to proposal 2, I just would be interested in feedback and thoughts on the first proposal, that we share our plans for a review of the vision and objectives and strategies that might go into that.
Councillor Clark and Councillor Fuller.
It seems an excellent idea. I think anyone would be happy to see that we're being proactive about how we push things forward in the town, and whether you call it strategy or revision, whatever it happens to be, for people to see that we have a concentrated version of that would make sense. I don't think it's anything that's unhelpful, but it does give us some direction.
Councillor Fuller.
No, I back that. I think looking forward could be really good. Because you don't have an agenda that's too long, and the next day is making the agenda very long. So it helps the new mayor have a focus, which I think will be very good. So yeah, well done. And that's where I would put it in the agenda.
Any other thoughts? I mean, it seems to me that, Councillor Fuller's probably right, and indeed part of looking forward, so it could be incorporated into that. And I have to say that what more appropriate forum could there be for us to launch that discussion in the town meeting itself? So, thank you for the work on that so far. I think we're moving in the right direction. So keep it steady.
Second proposal, Richard Blackman, sorry.
2 quick things that I think came up yesterday as well. 1900 on the poster. Is that 1900 staff, or is that when the tea biscuits are out?
I think it's, I don't know.
Sorry,
The
Does it
poster
start
says
at
1900, actually says 1900 PM, get rid of PM. But it's not, is it like 7 o'clock for tea and buns and then?
yeah, it's 7 o'clock for coffee and biscuits, and then we start at 7.
7:30.
Yeah.
That's just what it was, we're just putting that on.
So
Probably say 7%.
it should say 7.
It says that somewhere else.
Yeah, it just says on the poster 1900.
Yeah,
You
so
said today 9
Change
to
to
13
7 PM.
starts.
7 PM, the meeting starts.
yeah.
So I think one of the points that was made last time, we've been coming on to this, when we put big publicity around this, I know Rebecca's working on it now, if we can kind of up the ante on that, we can work on that. And perhaps in the publicity, say, 7 o'clock, refreshments, 7:30.
Yeah, they're used to that, aren't they?
Well, those who've been before are totally quite full. Second proposal then is, and I've rattled on about this before, we've got in May 25, we have the elections, and although we shouldn't be doing that much work necessarily now, because people will forget maybe, I think it's a good time at the ATM in May 2024 to let people know that there will be elections in May 2025 for councillors. We've got some vacancies, so people might be able to step forward earlier. But I would like to include a short piece in the agenda to say there are elections coming up. This is your chance to influence the town, to get involved in the town, and it's your town kind of approach. So again, I'd be interested in feedback.
Seems to me that one of the things you can say as part of that is come along to meetings, include perhaps coming along to some of the committee meetings, because that's a way in which people get a flavour of what we're talking about, how it's done. And perhaps they can see how they can bring their own skills and ideas to bear. So I think definitely have something in about it, but make the point that we would welcome people who may be interested, making themselves known to us and coming along to whatever they feel they can get along to.
Perhaps we do that still, important, because we're looking forward to the vision and looking forward to the 25.
Who do? Councillor Fuller.
I think the place for that is the same place as the other one. I'm just wary of having an agenda. I think the agenda, if we could cut it back a little bit, would be helpful. I agree with what's been said, and I think this is a really good call to arms from the new mayor. And I think what David has suggested as well about, have a look. This is the chance. I think it needs to be said now to fill out places for a start. And it's an opportunity where we can see that. And the new mayor should be setting out that.
Wonderful. All right, both of those in, and we can pick this up later.
Yeah, do you want them actually on the agenda under looking forward, or are we just having looking forward?
I think for me, I just was looking forward in the agenda, that when we do the presentation,
Let's do, yeah.
there is, I work on the slide.
It doesn't look so bad.
I didn't catch that, did
No, it looks a lot neater as it is.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Any more on any town meeting from Councillor Wade or from anybody else?
That's all good.
Can I just have a suggestion? Sorry about this. I think the agenda, I know we're trying to be specific about what we do, but there's things like Elm Cemetery, Parish Board, and the Nature Recovery Plan, an update on Fletton Field. Can they not be under a thing called Town Matters, like we do? I think the agenda's a bit long. I mean, I think the content is right. It's just what you present to the people coming. And so I think it needs to be slightly shorter, but we have the same points, but embedded in an overarching thing. So possibly Town Matters might be a good idea to put some of those items in.
Councillor Jessup and Councillor Clark.
I think sharing what we're going to be talking about is, just call it Town Matters. People may worry that something's not
Well,
going
you
to
could
be
do bullet
done.
points
Hang
underneath.
on.
So
Well, oh, I see. Well, what's the difference then?
it doesn't, it's the way it comes across.
We have to
visually.
remember that this town meeting, new councillors won't know. The town meeting is actually the town's meeting.
Not ours.
It's not the council's meeting, even though we set it up and run it and everything. And that's the thing we have to remember, that we've got enough opportunity, in my view, for people from the town who've come to actually deal with things that are topical for them. And we need to give them a clue as to what might be going on.
Yeah, I think a complimentary point, I think if you just say Town Matters, it's like going to the cinema where it just says film.
Yeah.
If you're interested in the cemetery, you'd want to know the cemetery's going. If you're interested in nature, if you're interested in Flatfield, you need to know that they're there.
I think they could come under something. I think.
No, I don't know why
Just adding
would
extra
say
lines.
that's like going to, it's like going to school.
Well, okay, it's, don't worry about it.
Yes.
If you don't agree, then I'm sorry. I just think it's too many points.
This is what I call the Brussels sprouts or peas items. Is it important?
Well, it's also, trying to design anything by committee is not always that straightforward. Personally, I think the agenda's fine, the way it's set out. And I could take the point that Councillor Clark's made. Town Matters could mean anything and nothing. At least this is highlighting matters, and the residents' Q&A will allow them to raise any other issue that they don't see on the agenda that they think we should be talking about. So I think.
These are all town matters at the end of the day, aren't
Absolutely.
Right, we'll move on to approve an extension of the licence with Anglian Water for use of the recreation ground until after the basketball court has been resurfaced. Emma, have we got a timescale?
Yeah, they originally had said that they wanted an extension for up to the end of August, which I did query, but they were sort of trying to cover, when they were going to get the basketball court resurfaced. That's now happening, I think, this week.
They're very busy.
They started.
Should finish within about 8 days, but obviously they want to allow a little bit of time, so they've said they really will most probably be out by the end of May. They are going to pay for the extra months because the agreement has run out now, so it's got to have an extension for while they're there. So they've said if they can have it up to the end of May, it means that they'll be completely finished and then they'll be off.
One thing that perhaps councillors should be made aware of, and we may have an update on this, is that the organisers of the Vintage Festival are
That's the
extremely
next
worried
item.
about the fact that if we don't get Anglian water off there, and that isn't available for car parking, they're struggling to see where they might park all the visitors that they think they might get. Now is it with the next item on there, because it talks about email from NNC regarding the use of Fletton Field for parking. But I think we most likely need to talk about these two things together.
Yeah, just to say I've spoken to Anglian Water about this, and they are more certain that they're going to be finished off in time for the vintage fair if they want to use the recreation ground, or if we let them use the recreation ground.
I was just going to add to what you've already said, Mayor, and that is that in addition to the vintage fair in May, the party at the wharf in July would normally expect to use it for parking as well.
There's another issue.
Councillor Fuller.
They've relayed the grass, haven't they? They've
They've
actually
seeded
got two fenced off areas. And my concern is, the first one I think will be done in the timescale they have, but they put a different fence around the area where the grass is, it's all mud.
They've reseeded, nobody's going to be able to go on that for about 12 months.
That's what I want to know. So that means there'll be less parking anyway, because part of the field has been fenced off.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be many cars, it just means you don't have the same capacity. And there'll be issues about driving around it as well.
Just on that basis, they're laying on top of the existing basketball, so there could be a bit more of a
It's going to be a slope down to the
slope down to
grass.
some.
Yeah, so it won't be true.
Low slung sports cars will be okay.
Well, that's, enter at your own risk.
I'm going to go buy one first.
It's quite fun.
Cool. Right.
Sorry,
Councillor.
can I say something? Do people consider the Prince William car park?
They're using that, yeah.
They are using that as well, okay. But for your,
Everything gets used.
okay, for party in the wharf, does that get used for that as well?
It's been used for God knows how many years as a car park. And if we can't use it as a car park, then gosh, I just don't know what the alternative is.
Okay,
But,
no, I just wondered whether it was.
Maybe
used.
the football club as well.
The football club.
the football club are very resistant to having parking there. We do use the football club, but only for crew and disabled driver vehicles,
Yeah, that's something.
because it's limited space. You've got to park another 200 cars somewhere.
The field will take half, I don't think it will take full capacity with that field, with that glass being done. So I think we'll,
The football club, as I said, are reluctant to have more than disabled and crew parking there. They're very clear about, they don't want encroaching onto where their pitches are.
makes sense.
For the July party, well, I know this is slightly not up here, but consider the Gascoigne car park, is that, because the school's not going to be in.
Sorry, which car park?
Gascoigne in the middle of town.
And the difficulty with that, A, you need to talk to the school, but B, frequently shut the gate
Yeah,
onto Blackpot Lane when the school isn't in operation. And they
we,
did it, I'm trying to think,
they did it when Alice
at an event I
Roberts,
was at not that long ago,
Alice Roberts.
the Alice Roberts talk in the Great Hall. And sheer chaos ensued because people just automatically drove out that way and get out or trying to reverse, but everybody was queued up behind them and we got fairly stuck there for a while. So we would need the school's cooperation to do that.
We did have it, you were talking about the literature festival.
Yes, this was the Lit Festival with Alice Roberts.
Hadn't mentioned to anybody that they locked the gate,
Yeah, it was a little unfortunate.
even though we thought of arrangements had been made.
Are you happy for the, I think we're straying on this
Oh,
part.
yes, and they're all
And
sort of
we-
linked. So, bearing in mind the discussion that we've had, I think that what we're really looking at is not extending the matter through to August, but in practice, we're probably talking about extending to the end of May with a hope that they will be clear of it in time for at least some of it to be available for parking for the Vintage Festival. And we will get, obviously, remunerated for that. In fact, it might be quite useful, bearing in mind the level of disruption that has been, to have available at the town meeting the figure of just how much Andy Water have paid the council for the privilege of using it. Councillor Clark.
Can we extend the licence to the 17th of May? Would that be, is that been?
Yeah, I think they said that they'll be off, but obviously if something disastrous happens between now and then they're halfway through and something awful happens, you know, I don't see the reason of doing it. They've said they'll be off.
So what date do we need to put a date on it?
I would just approve it.
Yeah.
Because they will be off.
No, maybe start.
They reckon it's going to take 8 days. Now, looking at the way, I know we've had, yesterday was a bit dodgy, but the weather's fairly settled for the next few days, so I don't see any reason unless something drastic happens.
Okay. To break this, I'll propose that we extend it to the 31st of May. Has anybody want to second it, Councillor? All right? Are you voting for it or are you trying to amend it?
You said somebody seconding it.
Oh, right.
I didn't see that.
Yes,
Oh, well,
I had the advantage, I was looking to you and beyond you. So there is a proposal, it is seconded. All those in favour of that extension, please indicate. That's everybody. Right, so we have approved that extension. The next item, which we've touched on already, but this is to consider the email from NNC regarding the use of Flecken Field for parking, and to agree to parking on recreation ground for the Vintage Festival. I think we just said we agreed to parking for the Vintage Festival, and keeping our fingers firmly crossed that it will work, albeit that it is a somewhat restricted capacity. What's the position of Flecken Field?
Well, it was one of the members of the Flecken Field Association did come and speak to me because he was a bit concerned that the ground was quite soft still, and although you can walk on it, cars going over it, and obviously this is what NNC have said. You know, they're a bit, in the beginning they were reluctant to allow anybody to use it. And I think we should still be mindful of that, and also for the recreation ground as well, because that is also going to be soft. And if we keep getting rain on top of rain, there is a potential that they won't be able to use that as well. So just asking you to support, if we feel that it's not suitable, then they won't be able to use it.
Problem with reinstating it would be they haven't got any money. They've already asked us for supporting, providing cash for the event. And if they don't have any money, they can come back to us to repair damage. And that's a blank cheque.
Councillor Shearer.
And obviously I'm interested in parking for other reasons as well, but I slightly worry, not only just because it really is quite wet on Fletton Fields still, but also about setting a precedent of that being an overflow car park for events. I'm slightly worried that, although I sympathise, with the parking issue, we're not buying Fletton Field to turn it into a car park.
No, agree.
Councillor Thorne.
I just would never, have we used it before like that?
I don't recall it being used as a car park.
It's been used, why do we want to use it now? We've survived without Fletton Field, so we're just going to have to survive without Fletton Field. I agree totally with Councillor Shaw, we should know that. It's not a car park, and the danger is, that any idea, if you put cars on it, there's a danger that it's going to just take the whole surface off, which makes Fletton Field totally useless to what it's meant to do.
Councillor
Tell
Chipson.
me, we've had the same sort of creep already
Yeah.
with the, recreation ground.
Yeah.
That was never a car park. But it's now.
But that's where you go, and I think Fletton Field should be sacrosanct in that respect. You fought hard to get it.
Councillor Clark.
Is it worth just making the point that in the extreme situation of the wreck not being as a one-off,
No.
we might allow it this year?
No.
Well, obviously a division of views, it just strike me that if the wreck is not usable because it's waterlogged, it's difficult to envisage why Fletton Field, which is not exactly a million miles away, wouldn't be in the same state.
Exactly.
It's higher up to the drains,
I think at the moment it's quite soft, and I think the concern was that, particularly if it's not marshalled, there could be problems.
When is the Vintage Car Festival? It's
17th.
18th of May.
18th of May.
So much it works, 13th of July. I don't see the weather changing that much to harden the ground up in the next 6 weeks. But it might in the next 3 months. But on balance, I think we should be careful about setting precedent. And I just agree with you. If the wreck is a bit of a mess, or potentially a bit of a mess, then Fletton Fields will be too. I accept Councillor Clark's point about the lip, but you can get around the lip. You don't have to drive over a lip.
So, I think we probably want a bit of a steer on whether we're going to be saying at this stage no to the use of Fletton Fields and overflow, but yes to the use of the recreation ground.
But that is dependent on
Subject.
how wet it is, and they need to know that if it is soft and wet, they're not going to be able to use it.
Yeah, so we want to reserve the right
Yeah.
to withdraw the facility if in our judgment it would result in an unacceptable level of damage to the recreation ground. Are people happy with that approach?
Yes.
Do you have a proposal? We will make it a formal proposal.
Well, I propose what you said. So,
That sounds more like you're seconding me, but I mean, I think we're more or less there. All right, between Councillor Fuller and myself, there's a proposition on the table. People generally happy.
We said that already, haven't we?
But I think we're just trying to get a proper vote so that we can be absolutely clear that there's support for that. So all those in favour of that proposition? Sufficient, not unanimous, but sufficient. Right. We've touched on this one as well before, but let's come back to the new draft vision statement and agree next steps to the extent we need to, if you've already covered it.
Nothing to add. I'll invite councillors to the meeting at the end of April, as I said. We'll see what the AGM says in May, and we'll reconvene in June.
Good. Any questions for councillor Wade on that? It sounds perfectly self-explanatory to me. Thank you. Brilliant. To consider an email regarding the parish and town council governance review, which I've got here somewhere.
Just the boundary commission.
Now, let me just bear with me. Yeah. So a response is required no later than the 15th of May, which is after, it's before our next meeting. And it talks about considering various items and submitting our views. Parish meetings to be incorporated into a parish council merges, changes to existing boundaries of the parish to better reflect local communities. Parish councils that should be renamed, and there's a number of councils on the parish or town council still meet administrative and business needs of the council. And it strikes me there are two items on there which are of direct relevance to us. One is the number of councillors. We have struggled to maintain 14. Historically, I think we increased ourselves to 14 a number of years ago when we published the Oracle, which was a hard copy newsletter that we put through the door of every home in Oundle, because it was being delivered by councillors. And having more councillors meant that people had smaller areas to deliver to. And that was partially the reason that we went up to 14 councillors. I think Councillor Chester would probably agree with me that that was the principal rationale behind it. Well, that rationale no longer exists because we aren't publishing the Oracle and we're not delivering anything by hand as a council. I suppose that if we actually managed to have a full complement of 14 councillors, it would be quite good because it would probably make it less likely, for example, that we would struggle with having committees that are quorate. We had that problem last week with the FNGP, we had it before on planning. So the more councillors, the better. And of course, if you could get the right number of councillors, you'd probably get a more diverse group, and perhaps, when I say more diverse, I look around the room and there is still a preponderance of men over ladies. Does anybody have a view? Should we be asking for changes which presumably would impact the local election in May of 2025? With the hands are going up. I was just going to start at the end and work along. So Councillor Fuller, Councillor Fraser.
I'm happy with 14. The issue, you've already expressed, if we reduce it, then the issues that you just described about not always being core is going to be a problem. I mean, we were lucky recently that we've had a full council for a while, and that's made it a lot easier to do business. But if we reduce the number to 12, I'm not afraid of that. I'm happy with 14.
Councillor Chester.
They were asking about the number.
I want to come back to the parish boundary issue.
That's what okay. My comment was going to be.
Right, I'll come back to that. Councillor.
I was going to ask, has the council ever had 14 councillors?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
But
I
not,
don't think it has since I've been here. It's
Not
gone up to
since I've
13.
I think you're right in as much as you'd have to work your way back to see when we actually had a full complement. And
I think it
one of
was
the
prior to
difficulties has always
2015.
been inevitably during the course of a 4-year cycle, you will lose councillors because they move away, because their circumstances change. Sadly, there could be health reasons and so on. And certainly we have never managed to maintain that number for any length of time, but we have, on occasion, managed to get that far, but certainly not in recent years.
and just on the same basis, since I've been involved, we haven't had an election because there's never been enough councillors to need an election. So I've written down here, it's better to have 12 elections than 14 and no elections. Because I think an election generates interest, and I think an election generates people saying, well, I disagree, or I'd like to. Whereas 14 maybe encourages just to be a bit passive, but
So, three things: too many councillors might encourage or exacerbate social moving. There are more people around to do stuff, so more people are able to do stuff rather than do it themselves. Point one. Point two, if we reduce the number of councillors, we reduce the quorum requirement. So if we only had 12, we might have to need 3 to do quorum, not 5. But point three, that's more generally, what's the legal requirement for a number of councillors? Is there a legal or a constitutional requirement which says for this number of residents, you have a councillors? What's the legal?
The short answer to that is there isn't one. It
So we can
isn't,
make it
it
ourselves.
isn't the broadly speaking. Yeah, I think the three suggest anything.
on that basis, the boundary commission link shows you how many councillors have. So Corby's got 20, 17, 18, Russia's got 15, etc. A lot of places bigger than us have got just a few more.
My fear is not so much full council meetings, because even at a time when there were only 5 councillors and you needed 5 councillors to be quorate, we kept it going. My worry is around committees, because that is where you tend to run into problems. And if you don't have enough people to service committees, there is an issue. And I think for that reason, I tend to agree with Councillor Fuller that ideally we would promote the election and get candidates, and we would have enough to have a full team. But I rather feel that we're kind of potentially wishing ourselves into problems if we actually cut it back to 12. In a sort of artificial attempt to maybe force an election. Any other views?
Do other councils have the same problem that we do in terms of filling seats, or are we unusual?
I mean, there are all, quite often vacancies. I do know a lot of councils that do have a full complement of councillors. I do know ones that have got vacancies.
So those are the full complement. Generally, what kind of numbers of councillors are there? What kind of size of constituencies?
There is the council that I was at previously. They've got 14, and that's a parish council. I think they've got a full complement at the moment.
And how many households are there?
Probably similar to here.
Similar to us.
Yeah, it's a very large village. Yeah, I mean, where I live, they're always full. I don't know how they do that, but I think they're all ones of the Conservative club. They all just recruit them in as soon as somebody goes.
So is it worth, so I know you're Christian, Dave wants to come in, is it worth somebody talking to the other councils to see what they do to achieve full councils while we're struggling?
I think quite a few of them, it's because it's political, and they are political.
I don't want to speak.
Yeah, and that is how they fill the seats, because they use their political parties to make sure those seats are filled.
I'd have to say that would be the worst thing that you could possibly imagine, because what you then end up with is, in a sense, of lobby fodder. People stand because they are filling up the party ticket, and they won't work in the same way as we do. I'll take Councillor Arnold before Councillor Fuller.
What number are we at the minute, Councillor?
We're at 12.
12 out of 14.
Personally, I think 12 is a better number, and I think we lower the core for the committees. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. And I think it actually makes more of us as a council. You're not guaranteed anything. There's no sure thing. I think you have to potentially earn your representation. I think that's actually very important, even at our level.
Councillor Fuller again.
With my NCAL cap on, we're not alone. And there's a big recruitment crisis at the moment with clerks, to be fair. So it might be the, I mean, this is a historical thing, but there are, as you said, there's a mix. Councils like us, you never get to our full number, and other councils who are. That's the county picture.
Councillor Chess.
Well, just make the point that larger councils are warded, some of them. So they've got people representing each ward. And the other thing is that we've never been, and I'm told always never been, a political council. Arundel's pride has been that it's a very political council. And so people vote according to what they really feel is the best thing to do.
Been, in all the time I've been on the council, which is since 1986, I can think of 2 people who stood under a party ticket, literally every 10. Neither of them actually stayed on the council for very long, although for different reasons. Simply so that we can move on, I'm going to propose from the chair, and I'll ask for a seconder if there is one, that we remain at 14. If that does not pass, then we'll take a different number.
I'll second it.
So all that,
So if I understand Robert's rules correctly, I can propose an amendment to that, which has to be voted on first.
yeah, I was going to do it the other way, but I'm open to suggestions. I was going to say, if getting to 14 doesn't pass, then we would have to take a proposition, because we'll have to have an agreement as to some number. So on the basis that we have a proposal seconded that we remain at 14 councillors and we don't ask for a change, all those in favour of that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. I better call for another proposition then. Somebody want to make a counter proposal?
I propose we reduce the number of councillors to 12 and consider the impact of that on the quorum's requirement for each subcommittee, or each committee, it's not subcommittee, it's each committee.
Yes, and in terms of considering that, for example, I think the quorum for all the committees is 3. The idea of reducing it below 3 doesn't.
You can't have 3
I withdraw that. I'll actually say I propose we have 12 councillors.
Can I just clarify before we go any further? We're not actually proposing we drop shot, we're merely proposing we suggest.
We suggest.
Yes.
So proposed by Councillor Wade that we respond to this by suggesting that we reduce our number from 14 as at present to 12.
Can I just ask you a question? If we suggest that, can they come, I'm guessing they can come back and say, no.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to give a reason why.
Okay.
Can I just ask you this, because you're very correct, actually, I was reading this again. We're submitting a view. So perhaps the proposal should be that our view is the number of councillors should be reflective of the requirements of the local town according to the council's, the current council's decision, something along those lines. Because we're not asking them to approve the reduction to 12, to have made that point. But I think we should suggest that councils have the opportunity to adjust the number of councillors required for the town.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Don't we have to declare how many people are on our council? You can't just keep changing your minds, can you?
Well, no, I mean, these
If we
things,
say we now could be 12, then
this,
who are we going to eject from the council?
this is a statutory, this is a statutory review.
Well, we have to, because you have to declare the number.
We are 12.
They are currently 12, so.
Oh, okay.
Um, And of course, this wouldn't apply until the next election, if it comes in May of 2025. So on the basis that 14 does not command support, we have a proposal at 12. Do I have a second at
Go
12?
back to 12,000, more than this.
Yes, so Councillor Clark seconds 12. All those in favour of 12, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Right, so that's the first part of the response. But the second part worries me, because this is history repeating itself. I've been asking for some time as to when it was likely we'd get the opportunity to make submissions about this. And now we find that we can't even consider it at a second full council meeting, because if we're going to make any proposals, we have to do it before the 15th of May. And the last time this happened, we put forward proposals and succeeded in upsetting Ashton, Barnwell, Stoke Doyle, and Hackle. But if you look at the boundaries for Anglin Parish, they're utterly illogical. If you look at Laxton Drive, on the old A1 reclaimed site, the old railway station, I venture to suggest that everybody assumes that that is in Anglin, rather than in the parish of Ashton. And yet, Ashton will be desperately unhappy if we suggest its incorporation, as we have done previously, because it would reduce Ashton to the point of becoming a parish meeting rather than the parish council. Although on the face of it, we don't have to put their views first. But it would always have been nice to have the opportunity to discuss things with them, but how are we going to do that before the 15th of May? Secondly, there is a new development being constructed off the Cottesloe Road, which has the extraordinary feature of a parish boundary that runs through the middle of it, and at least runs through at least one of the houses on the development, which is therefore in both Angle and Blackthorn, depending on which room in the house you happen to be in. And as yet, I've had no satisfactory answer from NNC as to whom council tax would actually be payable by that household, all the way up to pay it twice over. Logically, it is utterly detached from the built environment of Blackthorn. He says, slightly worried because tomorrow evening I sit in the Blackthorn Parish Council meeting, dealing amongst other things with their review of their neighbourhood plan, which I have to say wasn't in favour of that site being allocated for development. But that is utterly illogical. If you go out of Angle towards Blackthorn, you go through a sort of double bend, and as you go through that double bend and get onto the short straight that sort of starts taking you down to Blackthorn, there is a new housing development called Barn Lane. This is technically in Blackthorn Parish. It is immediately above Angle. Again, it is entirely detached from Blackthorn, and there is as it were, a green belt area between that and the first house in Blackthorn at Leverton. And it is part of the Blackthorn neighbourhood plan that they want to maintain that green barrier, as it were, between the village and Angle. And yet, of course, if we suggest that that's incorporated, that is less council tax going to Blackthorn as a result. If you look at Barnwell, extraordinarily, the Barnwell parish boundary extends across the river and actually means that the marina is in Barnwell parish, as is, not surprisingly, Barnwell Country Park. A country park which is, I suspect, far more frequented by residents of Angle than it is by residents of Barnwell, and both would seem to be natural parts of the town of Angle. And there's even a natural physical barrier, because you've got the A605 that would make a perfect dividing line between the two parishes. And I have to say that was part of things that we have previously proposed. Of course, in terms of income, it would make little difference to Barnwell, but it would take out two of their compression plate style attractions if they became part of Arundel. On the other hand, and I speak purely personally, that country park is so important to this town. If ever NNC were looking at not being able to run it, I would want this council to be stepping into the breach to make sure it wasn't lost. And that goes slightly more different. It's not in the parish, it's not impossible. It would be a slightly odd scenario to be rescuing a facility that's actually based in an adjoining parish. So to me, there are a number of absolutely obvious requests for a review to the parish boundary. The only way we can deal with that in terms of at least being open with the other councils is to send to them a copy of whatever we send to these people, which would set out not only the changes, but obviously, of course, the rationale behind why we seek those changes. Now, I had anticipated that when I did manage to get a date for this, we put it on initially a planning committee agenda, because it struck me that in some sense it sits right there and then they could make a recommendation to full council. We don't really have that luxury, except for the fact that although planning meetings are now going to be at the end of the month rather than the beginning in May, we're actually going to have two, because we're going to hold the one on the same night as we would normally do, because otherwise there's an enormous gap between the beginning of April and the end of May without us being able to respond to planning applications. So that's my thought. But it means that we have to take a decision today, which is why I've rather laid the point, because whilst I'm perfectly happy to write that up and provide it to the clerk, so that the clerk can get the, as it were, in return in by the deadline, there isn't really the luxury of getting it drafted, circulated, and anything more than somewhat informal responses, because we won't be able to debate it fully at a full council meeting. So, Councillor Fuller.
Is it something that's going to happen again in the near future?
I don't know about the near future. It's been quite a number of years since the last one.
It's just that I think it's a shame there's so little time.
Yeah.
And the normal, the route that we would need to do because of what happened last time would be to contact the local councils that we want to have an input and have a discussion with their clerk or chair. I mean, there's still time to do that, but it's very short time. But before we do anything, I think we need to let the parishes that are affected have a discussion with them. It's one of those things where you say, you know, how would you feel if we did this or asked for this? But the reasoning is, as you've explained very well and very clearly, that's the only way I would be happy to vote on this, because what we don't want is the reaction. If you weren't with the council then, it was not a very good reaction. We were seen in a very bad light by all the local councils, and it had a bad impact on our relationships with them for a while.
Councillor Clark.
I would say very much the same. I was on the council then, but there's still a lot of ill feeling in neighbouring parishes. And I think one of the things I think we've tried to work in the last 2 or 3 years is Arundel sort of becoming a bit of a hub, which is reflected in the local plan of the rural north, if you want to call it that. And together with all the parishes, wherever lines on the map are, we're much stronger in how we work with North Northampton than if we do the opposite. So I think for any benefit in terms of boundaries, etc., aiming for the next review in maybe 5 years might be something that's worth looking at. But I think a knee-jerk reaction tonight would be a mistake.
Councillor Wade and Councillor Shearer.
Councillor Shearer's before me.
Councillor Shore,
That's okay. I think it's a very sensitive subject. Part of me, the historian part of me, says you should never mess with parish boundaries. They've been in existence from around about the 12th century. I kind of think that they should stay. But from a practical point of view, I have sympathy for the views that have been expressed that it's a question of what we represent. Obviously there has been housing development which suggests, if you ask those people, if you say up the Blackthorn Road, where do you live? They probably would say Armwood. Majority of people that I speak to think Barnwell Park is an Armwood. Probably because it's actually, Armwood Mill is just beyond it, if you see what I mean. The kind of Beesby Mill is almost the limit of the parish. But it's a sensitive issue because, and this is where I agree with Councillor Fuller, that I think submitting a review without having had some form of discussion with the other parishes that are affected by this would be very difficult. And we've got very limited time, so I don't know how that discussion is going to take place.
I'll take, Emma, you're trying to get in, so before
Well, I
I
just
take
want to
your
agree
questions.
with what you've all said, because there, you can see, like with Barnwell Country Park, it just seems logical that it should be in Oundle, but knowing, and it happened way before I came, but people still talk about it.
Some people won't talk.
The effect it had on all the other parishes. I think it's a really, really difficult conversation to bring up again.
I'm kind of with Max on this. I think it's worth having a conversation. And time is obviously not that great either in this instance. But I think for the reasons that have been expressed by you and by Max, I think it is worth having the discussion. Whilst I also accept that too short a time looks like almost big brotherish, big council, and what are they doing? Who do they think they are? But I think if we are going to look for the next review, let's not leave it until the next review before we have those discussions. Let's in 6 months or 12 months, or maybe use this as a trigger to say to the council, we haven't said anything because we're going to discuss it with you. Is there just try and find a time that we and the board can meet and kick that discussion off. It will take time. We shouldn't be seen to be imposing ourselves, but if we leave it, we're going to end up in the same position.
Councillor Ball, then Councillor Fuller, then Councillor Clark.
I totally agree with what's being said here. My one thing is this not a good stepping stone, which may already happen, to have kind of a working group that you build relationships with these other areas, and you talk about where they may need extra support, so we don't necessarily take it off them, but we work with them.
And let's touch base on that, but we did try that a couple of years ago. And the response from most of the parishes, we didn't want to get involved in because you try and grab our land again. But 2 years is.
And maybe it's not about grabbing land,
No,
it's
exactly.
about we're working together.
I think now we
Because
are.
we have our joint interests.
Councillor Fuller.
Actually, this is an excellent item to add to the vision document. Because that's something that's a time thing, where you plan things, put things in place. I think this would be an excellent item to add, and then we have to agree that we're going to miss this one, but we're going to be ready the next time. And if we make it part of our vision to look at the boundaries, make it known, but done in a way that doesn't scare the other councils. I mean,
I wouldn't actually put it as part of the vision, but I would include it as one of the objectives. Which
yes, that's the thing. And that's what I'm saying.
and in this environment.
Yeah.
Councillor Clark, did you want to come in and then?
The only thing I was going to say is that I think a longer term strategy is crucial in this, but as you touched on, someone is going to move into a house quite soon, or may have already moved in. where their kitchens are natural and their living rooms are. And whether it's us, whether it just mentioning as a single sentence to Heather Jackson, you know, in light of
Yes.
recent building, do we need to look at the boundary and just see what, because Northbourne's electoral services, the boundary commission might say there's an anomaly right there that we need to solve. And then we will have a conversation later on, but that one house doesn't need to be solved.
Councillor Cheswick, Councillor Page, Councillor Shielder.
I think in these modern times, there are a lot of sensitive things that crop up that we've struggled with, and the Blackthorn Angle part of house building was really uncomfortable and painful for us, wasn't it, for both parishes? Because what happens now is that the higher up planning authorities, and we're not one of them unfortunately these days, and we don't really have a say, can just trample all over traditional boundaries. And, you know, where is a boundary not a boundary? Well, when is a boundary not a boundary?
I've lost track, but is anybody else over there?
I was going to say again, going back to what we did earlier on, we're submitting a view. And if the view is that changes made in the future be required to existing parish boundaries to better reflect local communities, is something that we will welcome. It's not saying that we want it to happen, it's saying a change or a review of the current boundaries may be appropriate to reflect local community needs, which is basically what's being said there, adding on support to it, but not opposing. We're going to take over all these matters in detail.
I mean, the way forward could be to take Councillor Wade's point and just make a very brief reference in here, particularly we could use the anomaly of
The house.
of property that may be in one parish and so on. But the other thing that we could do, which I think reflects the discussion, is that we could put together the response that we might have made, circulate that to the affected councils and invite them to have discussions with us in good time before this issue is raised again, so that we start to discuss the detail of it with them from a relatively early point, because otherwise you just end up repeating what's just happened here, which is that we push this off into the long grass and then we miss the boat for a second, in effect for a second time.
If you made it clear that that would be for a review, perhaps in
Exactly, that will be the next review after the 2025 review.
But I wouldn't do that quickly. I'd say in the next, give a few months to the idea of a working group. That because we're making good relations with 2 or 3 neighbours right now over buses, etc. To send them a sort of shopping list now would be counterproductive.
yes, we try and do the working party, that'd be a very good idea, but just when we submit our views, it is worth considering changes to local boundaries. I don't know when it was last reviewed. Sorry,
But it was
in the light of a number of anomalies such as platform.
Councillor Shielder.
I think I sort of make a similar point, and that what we're being asked to do, as I understand the document, is to submit our views to what is essentially a review process. So we could just simply respond by pointing out various anomalies that you've already done so, Mayor, and suggesting that they may like to review it. So we almost remain a little neutral in the process, and as part of that, suggests that the review should include obviously those neighbouring parishes. So we're just expressing a view. We're not saying this is what we want. We're saying there are some oddities here. You may wish to review them.
I would simply say oddities rather than necessarily naming what they are, because that might be misinterpreted.
Yeah,
And then if they come back saying, we haven't got time to come to board, well, fair enough. If they come back saying, well, such as, then we could talk.
Yeah, that's very good.
It's all diplomatic.
Is that okay?
I think we seem to be edging towards a solution here. Right, I think, are you clear where we are with this?
Obviously, you want to, make a point about the reduction in the, number of councillors as one. Are you suggesting that you want to,
Shall I draft a form of words? I'll send it to all the councillors who sat around the table tonight. Because we have got until May 15.
yeah, government, haven't you,
With a view to Emma having something. I don't think it's entirely fair to leave Emma trying to figure out what exactly needs to go in. I think I've got a feel from the meeting as to what should be in it, and perhaps almost as importantly, what perhaps shouldn't be in it. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Right, I'm sorry that took so long. I'm conscious of the fact that it's nearly 9 o'clock and we're not even probably halfway through the agenda, so let's see if we can move rapidly on. Financial matters, to approve the bank reconciliation, balance sheet and budget for March, which have been circulated. Figures for the bank accounts show. Councillor Wade,
Question, we have put some money into CCLA, I can't remember how much, but it's a significant sum.
sorry,
CCLA, we agreed 3 months ago, 4 months ago to put some money into CCLA.
Yes.
I think we should be including CCLA funds on this.
it's not been set up yet. It's during
We
the
agreed
process
to
of
that
being
in
set up.
November.
Yes, I know. All the paperwork was sent off. They had a bit of a delay in finding it. They've now found it, as far as I'm aware. And it's being set up.
Okay, in which case,
I will ask Paul for an update tomorrow.
and can you put it onto the outstanding bit of your report, because I think it's important, because we could be losing the interest
Yeah,
rate that prompted the whole decision, I suppose.
yeah, as soon as it's set up, that money's going to go in.
Okay, good, and if we can include your report, so we keep an eye on it. you know.
Yeah, if it's set up, then I'll put it on, yeah. Yeah, it'll just be part of the reports as soon as it's set up.
Yeah, so what I was asking for was the outstanding action to go onto your report, so we don't lose sight of the
All
outstanding
right,
action.
subject to that point, are we happy to approve those things? I'll propose it. You want to second it? Councillor Wade, all those in favour? Thank you. Next one is a proposition schedule for payments for March 2024 are approved, showing the somewhat staggering sum of £135,118.11. It does appear to include a figure of £93,790 for unmetered electric supply. But I don't really know whether that is a figure that's likely to change.
We are expecting a credit of £64,000 to come back to us in the next few days.
Well, by my calculation, that still leaves us about £29,000 down, so you know, necessarily put the bunting out.
But that's more in line with.
That's more in line with the actual readings.
The budget.
Yeah.
So with that slight sort of explanation, does somebody want to propose that? Proposed by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Shura. All those in favour? Thank you. The next one is to approve the Northants CALC membership at a cost of £2,818.28. It would be somewhat radical if we suddenly decided to say.
Do we use it? Do we use it as well? Do we use that at all?
Yeah.
I can't vote.
If a former mayor doesn't know the answer to that question,
I'll propose it.
I'll second it.
Worth asking a question to see the look in his face.
Yes, watch the recording then.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as you were too dumbstruck to speak, the thing didn't turn around. Right, it has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Right, now then, as I mentioned earlier, I was otherwise engaged when we did the F&GP that sat at 6:45 this evening. Ian chaired it in my absence. Do you want to just tell us what the recommendations were in relation to the financial regulations?
And let's go.
I think what we just say is because we've had that meeting, we've discussed with it. I've written that the following items were agreed at the Finance and General Purposes Committee that happened prior to this meeting. And I really think that's all we need to do.
Do you not need to approve them as a full council?
Pardon?
Do we need to approve them?
There's nothing to approve at full council.
In that case, happily, I don't need to trouble us for a vote, which will apply presumably equally to the next two items, the grants policy and the terms of reference.
And the grant application.
And everything.
It was all,
It was all done.
Everything went through. And those grant applications were
and it's all
approved.
It's all recorded.
It's all recorded. And I can watch it later. Right, well, that moves us right on. Highway matters to receive the report from the speed indicator device. I usually monthly look at those figures. Planning matters to receive the minutes from.
Sorry, the speed indicator, one of the things is whether we should move it, because people are getting used to it, which is that graph I sent around showing the sort of trend upwards. And when have we contacted the police about putting on platform room?
No, it's Northamptonshire Highways that we have to get the
And
licence
you
through.
cycle.
And I did meet with, on the 9th last week, I met with Steve Barber and he's agreed location on both sides and we're just waiting for the licence to be updated. And that's the next place.
Just on the basis we mentioned earlier about getting a second device. I contacted our 3 ward councillors at NNC about whether they could use their members' impoundment fund to help us purchase a new one. Helen's the only one who replied saying she was going to check, but she hasn't come back, so I just asked her again about that. So we'll see if we can get some funds from her from them. And then there's the police grant as the next option, so I'll keep you in touch with that.
Right, watch this space. Right, planning matters. The minutes have been circulated. Just a couple of quickies. The first application we dealt with was an application in respect to the old primary school, which is going to be redeveloped if they have their way into a new girls' boarding house. And in fact, the committee not only had no objection to it, but actually positively supported what was being proposed. And I think I sort of touched on it earlier, but because of the anomalies of the way in which the calendar is going to work, if the planning committee had its April meeting at the beginning of April and then didn't have a meeting until the end of May, it would be a nearly 2-month gap, and it just doesn't work. So the plan is that properties and estates management meet early, in fact, on the first Tuesday of May. And so the thinking is we'll have a planning meeting at 8 o'clock that night, by which time the estates management committee meeting should have ended, and members of the planning committee who are on that can then join the planning committee, and hopefully we can then look at it. And then there will be a meeting at the end of May as well, but of course there may be slightly fewer applications to look at that point.
Yeah, I suggested to Lisa this morning that that extra planning meeting you literally just cover the planning applications that you wouldn't necessarily cover if you wait until the end of May, rather than having an agenda with all sorts of things on and then having your other agenda, because I know there's a few other things that you want to discuss. So that meeting after estates is literally to cover the planning applications.
Yeah. We can balance it out, I'm sure. Lisa, I want to have a chat about it. And of course, we run into another slight anomaly, because I think that the relevant Tuesday in December is Christmas Eve. And with the best word in the world, we're not going to hold a corporate planning meeting on the evening of Christmas Eve. Nor indeed are we going to do it if we put it off a week, because that's New Year's Eve, which might be just as difficult. So the reality is that there will be a meeting at the beginning of January as well, because it's the only way of making the thing work. But there we are. Unless there are any other questions arising out of those minutes, we can move on. You'll notice the reference parish boundaries. Councillor Chappell suggested there should be another agenda item for discussion and review at the next planning committee meeting. Events somewhat overtook them. So then we will. The next item on our agenda, I can find it, is estates. And to receive the minutes from the meeting held on the 26th of March. Councillor Arnold?
I think, to be honest, the next item is probably the meat, if you like.
So unless anybody has any questions arising out of the minutes, Councillor Wade?
I just wonder, I'm interested, in maybe just be pure interest. 23208, what's going on there? The school of Birmingham. Is it appropriate to discuss that in open meeting?
Oh, yeah, so there was a number or a few complaints, I think, about the noise that the ballet group were creating during their, what we call classes, or before or after their classes. And we, agreed that the terms of reference for the ballet group would be very specific.
I guess I'm more concerned about the linking of that with the abuse of OTC staff not be tolerated. That's what we're really interested in. Should we be allowing
No,
that to continue? Oh, sorry, the use of the hall to continue? That's the outcome.
can I just give you a little bit more information? I think what happened at that meeting, you agreed that you were going to look at the agreement that you got with the ballet school, and then arrange a meeting with the teacher and potentially a couple of members from the estates committee, just to talk through some of the issues that occurred whilst there was an event going on in the hub, as well as ballet classes.
That's right,
But council staff were being abused by.
There were a few unhappy parents, and I think what we would potentially like, and this will be the discussion to have with Lisa, is that she makes her parents aware that they cannot speak to Angle Town Council staff in the way that they did, and also that maybe if there is an event on, they're not allowed to be in the building. They drop the children off and they wait elsewhere. But
It was a particular clash with the event in the hub, and they believe that they could use the hub. And there's nothing in our agreement that says they can or they can't. So we're trying to clarify that a bit. But
they're going to be supporting the council staff. I don't know, it's a disturbing thing to read. Second point for them, you're talking in here 23209, the QBH items preferred for discussion by the working party and QBH trustees. Which working party? Is that the one that I'm supposed to be leading?
Yeah.
And if so, Who's taking that forward? Have I got responsibility to take that forward, or is it the estates committee who can take that forward?
I think the estates
Who's
understood that you would.
Yeah, I thought you, yeah.
Right, so I'm taking forward, but then I'm going to go, do I then go to estates, who do I report
John,
back
the,
to?
the continual problem is that the Estates Committee doesn't have responsibility for QBH because it's not a town council thing, right? Which is the problem that we touched on last QBH meeting, that we need to probably link that together better. But at the moment, the trustees, i.e. all of us, empower the group to put forward a vision, which the estates might pick up on, but we as an estates group can't.
So very quickly, can I just update on the discussion we had, which is, I will sit down on Wednesday to draft some terms of reference with a member of the Culture Club, which would include that the working party oversees work done, that will exclude any financial recommendation or powers from that group. So estates will, in our view, hold the budget. But the working party, in our view, should oversee any work that's done, so we've got some responsibility for the work that's done. Is that report going back to the town council?
I think the trustees manage the budget.
Yeah, not the
Right,
States.
so who does the working party report to? The
The
trustees?
trustees.
Right,
So the States has nothing to do with QBH, which is the reason that there's this
but the
brilliant
states have so far approved spend on QBH.
on occasion, but only if we come back to the trustees, which meet too irregularly to be effective.
So when's the next trustee meeting, June?
It's not till June.
Okay, I'll put something in June.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So the next item is about our ability to continue with full burials, including presumably to a partial burial, which is a slightly alarming concept. That's all.
This is something that has come up a few times, I think, me, Max, and Ian, and Val talked about quite a bit. Max, I think it's fair to say, Max's proposal was that we limit it to 50 years to begin with. Is that correct? Am I speaking out to that, Max?
It was a suggestion.
It was a suggestion. Apologies.
So this is something that we sort of drafted in the meeting.
Yeah.
We haven't really approved it yet, because we had another state meeting, but would it be okay just to sort of share this round and the sort of the stuff we were talking about and our suggestions to at least raise at the town meeting? So I didn't do a lot of copies because I'm stingy. Yeah, I can pass those three down.
Essentially, the thing is that we're around that ring. Full body burial is becoming unviable after a certain amount of time. What are the answers to that long term?
Because even with the new extension,
Yeah.
potentially, and the present clearing of land we've done,
I'll keep letting them.
4 or 5 years might be the best we've got.
Don't
So we're not saying one thing or the other, but obviously at some point a solution is needed, which is either we stop burying, which we are entitled to do apparently.
Yeah.
Or we reuse burial sites, or we change the way in which we bury people. None of them are right or wrong, but we thought it was worth starting that discussion in open.
Yeah.
To at least start changing people's expectations of what would be possible in 5 or 6 years' time.
Yeah, just to expand on that, the discussion of the States meeting was about how we need to start managing expectation. The residents of Arundel, basically will not have the ability to have full body burials at the current rate within 4 to 5 years. So we've got to start managing the expectation of change, where we might move to cremation burials only. And well, I don't read out the list of options, you can see them all here. But I think we've got to consider, what we do about it.
Yeah.
I think the suggestion that it goes to the town meeting is because this clearly affects, the residents.
Yes, good.
And they will have a view. Rather than us just making a shock announcement that, from whatever, 2030, there will be, cremations only. I think it's important that we start raising the issue so that people realise that change has to happen.
I'm coming to you in just a minute. I mean, just by way of observation, when we started talking about a cemetery extension, I think we had assumed that the cemetery extension would give us enough land to ensure that we could continue burials for probably 25 to 30 years. That is not the outcome that we have ended up with as a result of the planning application. We got consent. It's a smaller area than I think we had envisaged. And I think the rate of use is probably somewhat greater than we calculated when we first started thinking about this during the course of drafting the then neighbourhood plan. Councillor Reichelt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that the Estates Committee have tabled this paper. I entirely agree with Councillor Shura's proposal that we raise awareness at the annual town meeting as a clear indication as to particular issues we need to come to grips with. The only reservations I have really on wording, on proposal 2, under rules options, I think anticipate, it may be the right word, perhaps we can put it across that while there may be an extension, we can't be certain at this stage, merely a possibility. And also under 3, reusing grave sites after 99 years. Complex indeed it is. So I'd be happier if we didn't expressly raise that one at the town meeting. Because inevitably, if we start using existing sites, which, as I understand it, well, I could be wrong, it means that using the same sites twice, the coffin of a newly deceased over a coffin of a previously deceased one, or am I wrong about that?
I'm not an expert, I have to say.
You won't really
Max is, yeah.
However, we'll defer to somebody who may have a better idea of these things than most.
Because sooner or later, frankly, on the face of it, if we use existing ones, putting a new coffin on top of a previous one, sooner or later someone would come in hotly and say, "Now look, my great grandfather is there, leave him alone." Then we did a job, carving down. We're clever.
But I think I'm right saying they might do, but the lease on the land is only for 90 years, and it seems that we are incredibly generous, if that's the word, in most places like 50 years. So we for a long time been giving a longer lease than one might expect, and some of the plots, I've got the records here that I did last year, we go back there are 22 burials from 1860. Yeah, 59 from 1861, 52 from 1862. Their lease is up and has been for some time, but it's a complex process. But it's not impossible.
Could we have a discussion after we've sort of got some news from the town?
Yeah, well, I think that must be right. I think at this stage, the idea is simply to inform the town, look, there is a coming issue. We would welcome your feedback.
Yes.
I think Councillor Rycroft is right, because there is people there who will have considerable attachment to certain spaces and will be horrified at the thought that they may, as they see it, have their spaces taken over. But, it's a discussion we can't conduct either, so I'd like to put it on the town meeting agenda.
Just to put some stats in, just on the calculations I did last summer, 21st century, we've been looking at 12 burials per year. One might estimate in the new area that we've recently cleared and our existing area, we've got about 54 spaces. We've obviously had a year since then, so that's a prediction of maybe 3 or 4 years in what we've got at the moment. If we look at the 2021 rate of burials, which was slightly higher, that would give us 3 years. We've had a year since then. So potentially looking at 2 or 3 years of what we have at the moment. The small extension of the housing estate might give us another 3 years, unless we start paying cremation only. So it's no longer a can we can kick down the road.
No, and indeed, of course, there are a heck of a lot of new houses going to be built. And sadly, sooner or later, occupants of some of those properties are no longer going to be with us. And if they are candidates for burial in our cemetery, we may find that we're around even quicker.
As your projection allowed for the fact that we've got some 19th century plots and we're now in the 21st century.
No, but that's one we would need to start using. And
That's the leasing issue.
So that is one option. People are desperate for full body burials to continue. We have land, which is what we use it.
Yeah.
Which has problems.
Right, so I think the plan is, it's on the town meeting agenda, and when we do a wash up at first full council meeting after that, doubtless all of the things we'll be looking at is whatever feedback might have come out of that discussion. Meanwhile, it's bound to stay at the forefront of the attention of the Estates Management Committee, and I think would also be very much as part of what the Planning Committee has to think about as well. It is one of the Town Council's objectives, going back, was to secure additional cemetery space. To be frank, in the whole time that that's been an ambition, we think we've delivered the small extension as a result of the Stoke Doyle Road development and nothing else. And we could probably look at the possibility of trying to acquire a completely new cemetery site. That is going to be costly and it's not very straightforward. Conscious of the time, a couple of items left. So, personnel matters. To approve changes to the bullying and harassment policy. I know Councillor Gray isn't actually with us, but she did put together some paperwork in that connection, which you have now.
Yeah, this also stemmed from Northants Calc. I think it's in one of the updates that I circulated. And so we'd already got our policy, which I spoke to Chris Moses about. He seemed to think our policy was fine, and fit for purpose. But as you'll see, just the highlighted parts in there, they're just things that they took thought, it might, you know, and we looked at it together and we think that it reads quite well.
So you can see that Councillor Gray, who is after all an expert on the subject, has had a look at the policy, has decided that it could be made perhaps clearer by making amendments which have been circulated. And then she also talks about that specific training going on as well, which I think is a separate subject we could looked at in the personnel committee next.
Well, no, it's just me going through the change to the policy with the staff.
You're happy to do that?
Yeah.
Without it going back to the personnel, so
Yeah.
that would be fine. In which
That's one of the
case,
that is one of the requirements with the new rules for the policy.
In which case, the question is, are people happy with the proposed revisions to the policy?
Here's the proposal. I'm happy.
I'm saying
Proposed by councillor Fuller, seconded by councillor Clark. All those in favour? I'd imagine anybody's going to want to amend it. Right. Nearly there. Next one is simply to receive the article coming up in the advertiser, that's been circulated. It's too late to do anything about it now. Which brings us on to any other relevant matters for the court only. Deference to Councillor Buller, we'll start at the other end of the table so you can see how it works. So Councillor Fuller, anything from you?
Yeah.
Mr. Chester? Councillor Clark?
I've just got three things, one of which I mentioned already about the Russian Lake bus trip. I got an email yesterday, I don't know what I did, about the bowls club wanted to put a team issue the second. So if anyone wants to go bowling on the 2nd of June, they're keen to have us.
We did it last year.
Yes, so you're the expert there.
No.
You're learning. Well volunteered.
Right.
And also, do you want to mention the police? And
I was going to ask, yeah.
Sorry.
So we've got the, two of the candidates coming, the Labour candidate Danielle Stone and the Liberal Democrat candidate Anna Gunn to Fletton House next week on the 22nd, 7 till 9. And it's a way of people being asked any questions, what they think they're going to bring if they get elected into the role. And then obviously also talk a bit about what they're going to do.
How well advertised has that been?
Sorry?
How well advertised has that been?
It only got approved and sorted today.
Okay.
Rebecca's done a poster and she's put it out on social media. I've also written to all of the neighbouring parishes.
It's just happened. But it's great, and it's a good example. It was an idea from Barnwell,
Yeah.
they got in touch. It's a nice idea of us working as a group.
And just to make it clear, did you invite the other candidate as well, but Southern where he hasn't responded?
Yeah, I can't make it.
No, we can't really.
No.
Has actually responded. Any more?
No, that's enough.
That's all right, Carl?
Nothing to add?
That's a sure.
Just one very quick one. Sorry for being up late. As you come into the town from the current parish boundaries, you'll invariably see a sign that says that we're twinned with some places that I can't remember in France and another one in Germany. And we're also a fair trade town. I'm just trying to wonder whether we need to sometimes revisit what any of this actually means and what we actually really do about it. That's all it's an observation.
We still are a fair trade town, and we are active in it.
Yes.
Hence the fair trade market.
Yes.
We're slightly less,
It's twinned.
less twinned, is it? I mean, we are still formally twinned, and indeed you can go and see it in twinned charters. You do have that. Just by one of those weird quirks of fate, on both occasions we signed twinned charters, I happen to be sitting in this chair as mayor, so. But we have had a scenario in which the twinning committee has not exactly been as active as it once was. The relationship between said committee and this council is practically non-existent. So it may be as well to look at it.
We just maybe want to look at some future date, that's all I'm saying.
I agree to put it on an agenda and suggest how they're not made one.
No.
Councillor Wade. Councillor Wade. Councillor.
Yes, just something, I'm giving you advance warning that, if I will not be, a member, I won't be a member of the planning committee going forward after the next thing, and I won't be the head of the estates committee anymore. I don't have enough time to do what I currently do. But I think I'd be better served maybe doing things like, I'm going to still be part of the estate committee and this committee, but I think doing things like going on to the Fletfield Association meeting and things like that, I think that actually better serves the people around with than what I'm currently doing. So I'd rather do that and try and be worthwhile in that way. I'm saying I would urge someone who is interested in estates and planning, if they want to do it, do it. There you go.
Well, thanks for the heads up, because of course we lost Councillor Jones off the planning.
Yes,
committee.
I know.
He had to stand down as a councillor. It would appear.
Well, this is rather than standing down as a councillor. This is the next.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm relieved,
Pressure.
I'm
Yeah.
relieved that you don't feel that that's necessary.
No.
But you will be missed in planning, and that does mean that there will be opportunities on planning, he said, looking around the room and noticing there's a new councillor who isn't yet on any committees, but who might possibly be invited to sample some.
Got next month, sign at all sorts.
Yeah.
Say nothing until then.
And a meeting.
Maybe my advice.
And of course, just in a sense, a heads up, because at our May meeting, we will be looking at mayor, deputy mayor, committees and so on. So trying to start getting the thinking caps on about those matters. Also on the agenda for the town meeting is of course the community awards and the Paul King Award, which means presumably that they'll be on our agenda for some sort of discussion about who's actually going to get them. Which presumably, in order to keep the suspense going, will be taken in camera at the end of the meeting. So that way, we go into the town meeting without people knowing in advance who it may be. Assuming that awards are made, I'm not hoping they're not. And Emma, let's do anything else.
Well, no, I'm going to show you this after.
In which case, just after 9:30, we'll meeting closed.